Not wind, not pipes, not your imagination. The rock itself vibrates, producing a sound you feel in your bones before your ears even register it. And carved into its surface, 900 images. Some of the match symbols found in ancient Scandinavia. Some appear to map star systems with accuracy that shouldn't exist. And the people who study it professionally will tell you, quietly, off the record, they don't have a complete explanation. But that's just number one. There's also a lake in this province that vanishes overnight, thousands of gallons, gone, no drain, no channel, no answer, and then refills itself weeks later like nothing happened. There are tunnels under a Canadian city lined with masonry nobody remembers building. There's a stretch of road where your compass doesn't just drift, it spins. There's something at the bottom of a river that looks, impossibly, like a Roman road. 10 sites, 1 province, 0 satisfying explanations. And here's what makes this different. These aren't ghost stories or fringe theories. These are real coordinates, real geology, real archaeology, and real scientists who go silent when you push them far enough. Most people drive through Ontario and see highway. You're about to see something else entirely. Hit subscribe. Your curiosity just found a home. Let's get into it. Number 10. The Glacial Potholes of Rockwood, Ontario. Rockwood Conservation Area sits about 80 kilometers west of Toronto, close enough to civilization that you expect normal things, far enough that normal things apparently stopped applying. It's old-growth forest, limestone cliffs, and the kind of quiet that makes city people uncomfortable. Beautiful, genuinely. The kind of place you'd photograph for your phone wallpaper and never actually set as your phone wallpaper. But the potholes. Oh, the potholes. We're talking dozens of perfectly cylindrical holes drilled into solid rock. Some deep enough to stand inside. Walls so smooth they look machine-tooled. Official explanation: glacial meltwater spinning rocks in vortexes for thousands of years. Sure, fine. Except the concentration here is bizarre. Geologists worldwide can't replicate why so many exist in one small area, and the interior polish exceeds what lab models actually produce. But here's what nobody tells you. Some of the deeper pits show spiral scoring patterns that look less like random tumbling and more like threading, like the inside of a bolt. No published paper has fully addressed this. Scientists just sort of move on. Classic. As one Reddita put it, took my geology class there. Student asked why they looked drilled. I gave the textbook answer. Standing inside one, staring up at a perfect circle of sky, I didn't fully believe myself. So what's the real trade-off here? It's a public conservation area. Affordable entry. Genuinely stunning. But you'll spend the entire visit oscillating between, wow, nature is incredible and nature did not do this alone. That cognitive dissonance. Completely free of charge. Okay, can we talk about the signage? The park sign explains these potholes in literally 3 sentences. 3. Like it's simple. Like it's settled. Formed by glacial meltwater. That's it. That's the whole sign. Meanwhile, scientists are quietly arguing about spiral scoring patterns in peer-reviewed journals, and the park's interpretation board has the energy of a Wikipedia stub written by someone with a dentist appointment in 20 minutes. Picture this. Late afternoon, October. The forest is half bare, golden. You climb down into one of the larger potholes. It's deeper than you expected, walls cold and impossibly smooth under your fingertips. The forest sounds go muffled. You look straight up at a perfect circle of gray Ontario sky. And the thought that hits you isn't incredible glacial erosion. It's a something made this. You can't explain why you feel that. Neither can the geologists. Be honest. Could you stand inside a mysteriously perfect rock cylinder and not immediately question everything your high school or science teacher told you? Drop a yes or nope in the comments. And if Rockwood's holes are unsettling on dry land, wait until the next place, because what we're talking about is even more geometrically suspicious, and it's been sitting at the bottom of a river the whole time. Number 9. The Ancient Road of the Ottawa River, Ontario. The Ottawa River stretches over 1,200 kilometers, forming the border between Ontario and Quebec, carving through Canadian shield rock that's some of the oldest geology on the planet. It's a working river, cargo, recreation, history. Parliament Hill literally sits on its banks. It's about as official a Canadian landmark as you can get without slapping a maple leaf on it and charging admission, which makes what's underneath it so much weirder. Recreational divers and sonar operators have been reporting the same thing for decades. A formation of stone blocks, right-angled, roughly uniform in size, fitted together, extending in a linear strip along the riverbed. Not a patch, not a cluster, a line, like a road, like something you'd find in Bath, England, or outside Rome, except you're in the Ottawa River wearing a wetsuit and questioning your entire understanding of Canadian prehistory. But here's what nobody tells you. The standard dismissal, it's just natural limestone jointing, is a real geological phenomenon. Rock absolutely can fracture into block-like geometric patterns. True, except the scientists doing the dismissing, most of them haven't actually dived the site. They're applying general principles to a specific formation they've never personally examined. That's like a doctor diagnosing you over text based on a symptom you describe to their receptionist. The linearity is the problem nobody wants to solve. Natural jointing creates grids and patches. It doesn't typically produce a narrow, continuous, directional strip extending across a riverbed like someone had a destination in mind. As one Redditor put it, I've dived Great Lakes wrecks for 20 years. I know what natural rock looks like underwater. That Ottawa River formation is the only thing I've ever surfaced from and said out loud, I don't know what that was. Here's the real trade-off. This mystery lives in a bureaucratic dead zone, too intriguing for the diving community to stop discussing, not important enough for a university to fund a proper expedition. So it just sits there, underwater, waiting, getting absolutely zero attention from the people with the equipment to answer the question definitively. Okay, can we talk about the fact that nobody has formally investigated this? We have underwater drones. We have 3D photogrammetry rigs that cost less than a used Toyota. We mapped the floor of the Pacific Ocean with more thoroughness than we've applied to a formation sitting in a river you can kayak on a Tuesday afternoon. Send a grad student. Send an intern. Send anyone with a GoPro and a waterproof notebook. The formation isn't going anywhere, mostly because nobody's even gone to look. Picture this. You sink below the surface of the Ottawa River, visibility maybe 10 feet, murky green light filtering down from above. Your dive light cuts through the particulate, and then the beam catches something, edges, right angles, a grid of stone blocks stretching ahead into the darkness, covered in a thin veil of river silt, perfectly aligned. No current disturbs them. No explanation greets you. Just stone, laid in a line, by something or someone, going somewhere that the river has kept secret for a very long time. And if an unexplained road at the bottom of a river feels remote and easy to ignore, the next mystery isn't hiding underwater at all. It's under a major Canadian city. People walk over it every single day, and almost none of them have any idea. Number 8. The Hamilton Tunnels, Hamilton, Ontario. Hamilton, Ontario. Population roughly 580,000 in the city proper, pushing 780,000 in the metro. Sits at the western tip of Lake Ontario, an hour from Toronto, historically known as Steel Town, industrial, gritty, genuinely underrated. It's got a booming art scene, incredible waterfalls literally within city limits, and the kind of working-class authenticity that other cities spend millions trying to manufacture. Hamilton is legitimately cool now. It earned it. But underneath all that cool, something older, something unaccounted for. Here's what you're working with. Hamilton is a 200-year-old city built in geological and historical layers, colonial sewers, old rail tunnels, Prohibition-era smuggling routes, industrial service passages. That's normal. Old cities have underground infrastructure. Fine. Except utility crews and construction workers, over decades, have reportedly broken into passages that match none of those categories. Different masonry, different construction techniques. No corresponding entry in any municipal record, colonial archive, or engineering document. The stonework in the unidentified sections is the specific problem. It's clearly old, but it uses techniques that don't align with British colonial standards of the 1800s. Some amateur historians have floated French-era origins. A few have gone further. Nobody with institutional authority has gone anywhere with it, because the standard municipal response to finding an unknown underground void is not fascinating. Let's investigate. It's poor concrete. File under N for not my department. Go home. But here's what nobody tells you. The city of Hamilton does not have a comprehensive underground map accounting for all known voids and passages. This isn't a conspiracy. It's the completely mundane administrative reality of a city that's been building on top of itself since 1816. Nobody sat down in 1987 and said, let's hide the tunnels. They just never fully mapped them. And every time construction hits an unknown passage, the safety protocol, fill it, seal it, move on, systematically destroys whatever archaeological evidence might exist inside. Not malicious, just catastrophically incurious. As one Reddito put it, my dad did infrastructure work for the city in the 80s. They broke into a passage near James Street, arched ceilings, tool marks on the walls. Told to pour concrete and move on. He took one photo on a disposable camera. I still have it somewhere. So what's the actual trade-off here? Hamilton is a genuinely great city with real affordability, real culture, and real momentum. But it's also a city sitting on top of a mystery it keeps accidentally rediscovering and then immediately reburying. The history isn't gone. It's just entombed. Somewhere under your feet, if you live there, is a corridor that might be older than the country, and the city's official position is essentially, we'll get to it eventually, which is municipal code for never. Okay, can we talk about the concrete thing? Because I need someone to explain the logic to me. You're a construction crew. You break through a wall. Behind it is a hand-carved stone corridor with arched ceilings and tool marks that don't match anything in the city's records. Your options are A. Alert someone with archaeological training, or B. Fill it with concrete and finish your Tuesday. And the answer, consistently, historically, across multiple incidents in Hamilton, has been B. Every single time. We are out here speed-running the destruction of our own history and calling it a safety protocol. Picture this. You're walking down a Hamilton sidewalk on a gray Wednesday morning, coffee in hand, headphones in, thinking about literally nothing important. And 15 feet below your sneakers is a stone-lined corridor that nobody alive remembers building. The ceiling is low. The air is completely still, the kind of cold, pressurized stillness that exists nowhere above ground. Water drips somewhere in the darkness ahead. And at the far end, assuming it hasn't already been filled with concrete by a guy named Dave who had a 3 o'clock tea time, is a wall of carefully fitted stone that predates everything you've been taught about who was here first and what they built. Dave poured the concrete in 1987. We'll never know what was behind that wall. And if underground mysteries in a major city aren't enough, the next site is right on the surface, fully visible, sitting on a lake shore for 1,000 years. And it's the only one of its kind in the entire country, which somehow makes it more mysterious, not less. Number 7. The Serpent Mounds, Rice Lake, Ontario. Serpent Mounds Park sits on the eastern shore of Rice Lake, near the small community of Keene, about 30 kilometers southeast of Peterborough. It's quiet out here, cottage country adjacent, the kind of Ontario landscape that looked like a group of 7 painting had a baby with a provincial park brochure. Rice Lake itself is gorgeous. Calm. The kind of water that reflects clouds so perfectly you briefly forget which direction is up. And on the shore of that lake, someone built a snake out of earth. A 200-foot snake. Out of earth. And then buried people inside it. Let's break it down. The mound is a National Historic Site of Canada, now under the care of Hiawatha First Nation and Curve Lake First Nation, the communities whose ancestors built it and who have maintained its significance for generations. Archaeologically, it's associated with the Point Peninsula Complex, estimated somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 plus years old depending on which paper you're reading and how much the authors are willing to commit. Grave goods recovered from the site include materials from trading networks spanning hundreds of miles. Copper from Lake Superior. Shells from the Gulf Coast. This wasn't an isolated community building a snake in the woods. This was a connected, sophisticated culture with continental reach, which makes the mainstream narrative about who built it Interesting. But here's what nobody tells you. The serpent shape requires planning. Not rough planning, serious, coordinated, bird's-eye conceptual planning. You cannot build a 200-foot recognizable effigy mound by trial and error. Someone had to design this from above, in their mind, before a single basket of earth moved. That implies organizational sophistication, communal coordination, and geometric thinking that doesn't match the small seasonal bands a hunter-gatherer's description that textbooks have historically applied to this region. And there's no large permanent settlement nearby that would explain the labor force. Mound building at this scale elsewhere in North America, Cahokia, Poverty Point, is associated with major population centers. Rice Lake had seasonal camps. So either a massive regional coordination effort happened here, with people traveling significant distances specifically to build this thing, or the archaeological picture of who lived here is fundamentally incomplete. Both options are, academically speaking, a big deal. Neither has been fully resolved. As one Reddito put it, grew up 20 minutes away, didn't visit until I was 35. Stood at the head of the serpent, looked down its body toward the lake, and got actual chills. It doesn't feel like a natural landform. It feels like someone meant something by it, like standing in a cathedral that forgot to build walls. Here's the real trade-off. This site carries enormous cultural weight for the First Nations communities who steward it, weight that goes far beyond the archaeological puzzle. It's a sacred space, a living connection to ancestry, and the fact that Canada's only serpent effigy mound is still, somehow, not widely known outside of regional archaeology circles says something uncomfortable about which histories this country decides to amplify and which ones it lets sit quietly on a lakeshore, waiting to be noticed. Okay, can we talk about the disparity for 1 second? Ohio's Serpent Mound, bigger, yes, but the same basic concept, gets international documentaries, UNESCO conversations, and a gift shop that probably sells serpent-themed candles. Canada's Serpent Mound gets a parking lot, a conservation area day use fee, and a Parks Canada plaque that takes 3 paragraphs to say what it could have said in one. America finds a mysterious earthwork and immediately puts it on merchandise. Canada finds one and adds it to the list of things we'll get around to appreciating eventually, alongside the tragically hip and affordable housing. Picture this. Early morning, late September. Mist rising off Rice Lake in slow, unhurried curls. The low ridge of the Serpent Mound catches the first gold light of dawn. You can see the shape from the right angle, the long body curving toward the water, deliberate and unmistakable. Nobody else is here, and you walk the length of it slowly, thinking about the people who carried baskets of earth, basket by basket, to build something they believed would outlast them. It did, by 1,000 years and counting. We just forgot to pay attention. And speaking of things that mess with your sense of reality, the next site doesn't mess with your sense of history. It messes with your compass. Literally, your compass stops working, and nobody's been able to explain why without immediately changing the subject. Number 6. Spooky Hollow Magnetic Hill, near Simcoe, Ontario. Simcoe sits in Norfolk County, southwestern Ontario, about 45 minutes south of Brantford and an hour from Hamilton. It's quiet agricultural country out here, tobacco farms, fruit orchards, the kind of flat rural landscape where the sky feels genuinely enormous and the nearest Starbucks is a 40-minute commitment. Norfolk County is legitimately beautiful in an understated, doesn't need to prove anything way. Simcoe itself is a small city of about 15,000 people, historic downtown, good bones, the kind of place that functions exactly as advertised. And then there's Spooky Hollow, which does not function as advertised, or as physics intended. Here's what you're working with. Park your car at the bottom of the hill. Shift to neutral. Release the brake. Your car rolls, uphill, toward the higher ground, against gravity, against everything Sir Isaac Newton allegedly figured out in the 1600s while sitting under a tree being competent. The standard explanation is a gravity hill, an optical illusion where the surrounding landscape creates a false horizon, making a slight downhill slope appear to go uphill. Your car is actually rolling downhill. Your eyes are just lying to you. Fine. Except the compass. But here's what nobody tells you. Gravity hills are a documented, real phenomenon. About 100 of them exist worldwide. The car trick? Explainable. But multiple independent visitors, with actual compasses, with magnetometer apps, with GPS units, have reported the same additional anomaly, magnetic compass fluctuations in the immediate area that have absolutely nothing to do with optical illusions. Compasses don't hallucinate. Magnetometer apps don't get confused by pretty scenery. Something in the ground near Spooky Hollow is interfering with magnetic readings, and no identified iron deposit or geological feature in the area accounts for it. Surveyor reports have been inconsistent. Some confirm the optical illusion explanation perfectly, others find gradient measurements that don't quite add up. Nobody's formally studied the magnetic component. Because of course they haven't. As one Reddito put it, went with a GPS, compass, bubble level, and video camera. Car rolled, bubble level confirmed we were going slightly downhill. Optical illusion, debunked. Then I pointed the compass at the hill. The needle was spinning like a ceiling fan. My magnetometer app crashed. We left immediately and didn't really talk about it on the drive home. So what's the actual trade-off? Spooky Hollow is genuinely fun, the kind of local curiosity that makes for a great afternoon detour and an even better story at dinner. But the experience has two completely different layers depending on how deep you're willing to go. Layer 1, cool optical illusion, great for kids, 5 out of 5 stars, Instagram it and leave. Layer 2, why is your compass doing that? What's in the ground? Why does Norfolk County geology suddenly get weird in this specific spot? And why has nobody formally investigated the magnetic component despite it being reported consistently for decades? That layer is less fun. That layer follows you home. Okay, can we talk about the debunking community for 1 second? Because there is an entire genre of YouTube video, you've seen them, where someone drives to a gravity hill with a bubble level, confirms the car rolls downhill, and declares the whole thing explained. Case closed. Mystery solved. Did you see me use the bubble level? Very scientific. Except every single one of these videos addresses exactly one aspect of the phenomenon and completely ignores the compass reports. Every single one. It's like investigating a house fire, confirming that, yes, fire is hot, and filing it as resolved without asking what started it. Darren, I'm begging you. Point the camera at the compass. Just once. Just for me. Picture this. Late October afternoon. The trees lining Spooky Hollow half bare, gold and rust leaves carpeting the road in a way that looks genuinely cinematic. You stop the car. Shift to neutral. Release the brake. Your passenger laughs nervously as the car begins to drift, slowly, impossibly, toward the hill. You pull out your phone compass as a joke, mostly. The needle isn't pointing north. The needle isn't pointing anywhere consistently. It's moving, rotating. Like something underneath the road is breathing in slow, lazy circles. The laughter stops. You both look at the compass, then at each other. Then you put the car in drive and agree, without discussing it, to never come back. You come back the following weekend with 3 friends. Would you visit Spooky Hollow just to test the compass yourself? Drop a yes or hard no in the comments, because I genuinely need to know how many of us are willing to personally investigate things that are probably fine and definitely aren't fine. And from a place where a lake of land plays tricks on your senses, the next mystery involves an actual lake. One that plays tricks on the entire concept of having water in it. Because it drains. Overnight. Completely. And nobody has ever found where it goes. Number 5. The Disappearing Lake, Lake George, near Echo Bay, Ontario. Echo Bay sits in Algoma District, Northern Ontario, roughly an hour east of Sault Ste. Marie along the north shore of Lake Superior. This is deep Northern Ontario, the kind of geography where your GPS starts making suggestions that sound increasingly uncertain, where the nearest Tim Hortons feels like a destination rather than a convenience, and where the Canadian Shield just absolutely refuses to apologize for how dramatic it looks. It's stunning out here. Genuinely, aggressively stunning. Dense boreal forest, ancient rock, lakes so clean they look fake. And one of those lakes occasionally just leaves. Here's what you're working with. Lake George, more of a large pond than a great lake, let's be honest, but sized well enough that its disappearance is genuinely alarming, has been pulling this trick for over a century. Local records and oral accounts of the drainage events go back generations. The lake fills normally. It looks normal. It behaves normally. And then, sometimes overnight, sometimes over a couple of days, the water level drops dramatically. Not unusually low for August drops. Gone drops. Dock sitting on mud drops. Where did thousands of gallons of water go drops? The leading theory is a karst system, underground limestone cave networks that act as natural plumbing, draining surface water into subterranean channels. Ontario has very little classic karst terrain compared to, say, Florida or Kentucky, which already makes this unusual. But the karst theory has a bigger problem than just being geologically uncommon for the region. But here's what nobody tells you. If it's karst, the drain should be findable. Ground-penetrating radar, dye tracing, modern hydrology tools, all of these exist. All of these are specifically designed to locate exactly this kind of underground drainage feature. And the specific outflow point for Lake George has never been identified. Not narrowed down. Not approximately located. Never found. But the draining is almost forgivable as a mystery. The refilling is the part that should keep hydrologists awake at 3 a.m. Karst systems don't typically return water to the same surface point they drained it from. Water that enters a karst drain emerges somewhere downhill as a spring. It doesn't come back up through the same hole it left through. Lake George refills in the same lake bed it drained from, which means either the karst theory is incomplete, or the underground plumbing here is doing something genuinely unusual, or there's a third explanation that nobody's proposed yet because nobody's looked hard enough to need one. As one Reddito put it, my grandparents had a cottage near Echo Bay. Grandpa said Lake George had a mood. Some summers perfectly normal, some summers you'd wake up and the dock was on mud. He said the old-timers called it the lake that breathes. I think about that phrase more than I'd like to admit. So what's the real trade-off here? Lake George isn't a tourist attraction. There's no interpretive center, no viewing platform, no pamphlet explaining the phenomenon in 3 reassuring sentences. It's just a lake in the northern Ontario bush that occasionally does something impossible and then acts like it didn't. The only people who've documented it consistently are the locals who've lived near it long enough to stop being surprised and start being philosophical about it, which is somehow more unsettling than if they were panicking. Okay. Can we talk about the fundamental unfairness of Northern Ontario's relationship with scientific attention? Because here is a lake that demonstrably vanishes on a recurring basis with no identified mechanism. That's not a folk legend. That's a documented hydrological anomaly, and the academic response has been essentially silence. You want to study Lake George? Fantastic. Drive 6 hours north of the Salt on a highway that transitions from 2 lanes to 1 lane to "Are you sure about this?" without warning. Arrive in Echo Bay in November. Now do hydrology fieldwork in -25 with equipment that doesn't love the cold. Scientists aren't avoiding this mystery out of intellectual cowardice. Their field vehicles simply have limits. But still, someone sent a grad student, a determined one, with good boots. Picture this. You're staying at a cabin near the lake, a friend of a friend's place, borrowed for the long weekend. Friday night, you fall asleep to the sound of water lapping gently against the rocky shore. Normal. Peaceful. The moon on the surface, a loon somewhere in the darkness. The whole northern Ontario dream fully activated. You wake up Saturday morning, walk to the window with your coffee, look out at the lake. The lake is gone. Not low. Not receded. Gone. A muddy basin where thousands of gallons of water existed 8 hours ago. No sound of rushing water. No visible channel cutting through the mud. The surrounding forest is completely still. The dock stands on cracked earth like it's forgotten what it was built for. Your coffee gets cold while you stand there trying to construct a rational explanation and failing completely. The lake comes back 11 days later. Nobody sees it happen. It's just full again on a Tuesday morning, like it never left, like you imagine the whole thing. Like the ground beneath northern Ontario has moods it doesn't feel obligated to explain to you. And from a lake that vanishes into the earth, the next mystery might have fallen from the sky. A lake so perfectly, suspiciously, almost offensively circular that geologists have been arguing about what made it for over a century. And it's called because Ontario has absolutely zero chill. Skeleton Lake. Number 4. Skeleton Lake, Muskoka Region, Ontario. Muskoka. You know Muskoka. Cottage country. The place where Toronto money goes to decompress on a dock with a gin and tonic and pretend the city doesn't exist for 2 weeks every August. It's beautiful in the specific way that makes people do financially questionable things, buying properties they can't afford, justifying boats, developing opinions about the correct type of Muskoka chair. The region is genuinely stunning. Ancient Canadian shield rock, pristine lakes, forests that look like they've never met a strip mall. And sitting among all those gorgeous, normal, geologically explainable lakes is Skeleton Lake, which is none of those things. Here's what you're working with. Skeleton Lake is round. Not kind of roundish for a lake round. Aerial photo stops you mid-scroll round. The kind of circular that makes your brain go, lakes don't do that, before you've even consciously registered why. It's also significantly deeper than surrounding lakes of comparable surface area, another anomaly, and its water clarity is exceptional, the kind of blue-black transparency that looks beautiful from above and slightly terrifying from a boat when you're staring straight down into it. One camp of geologists says meteor impact crater. Precambrian. Roughly 800 million years old, give or take a geological era. The shape fits. The depth-to-diameter ratio fits. The location in ancient Canadian shield bedrock fits. If confirmed, it would be one of the oldest identified impact structures on the planet. But here's what nobody tells you. The gold standard for confirming a meteor impact site is something called shock metamorphism, specific mineral deformation that only occurs under the extreme pressures generated by an extraterrestrial impact. Shatter cones. Planar deformation features. The geological fingerprint that says, definitively, something hit here hard and fast from above. Skeleton Lake doesn't have confirmed shock metamorphism, which means, scientifically, you cannot call it an impact crater. Full stop. Case not closed, but not open either. Suspended in an incredibly frustrating academic middle ground. Here's the problem with that dismissal, though. 800 million years of erosion, glaciation, tectonic activity, and general geological chaos would plausibly destroy or obscure shock evidence that old. The absence of evidence isn't automatically evidence of absence. It might just be evidence that 800 million years is a very long time, and rocks don't keep receipts. But you can't confirm an impact without the evidence. So the debate sits there, unresolved, like a group chat where everyone has seen the last message and nobody wants to respond first. The alternative explanations, glacial plucking, differential erosion of a pre-existing circular feature, all have their own problems. Specifically, none of them satisfyingly explain the depth-to-diameter ratio, which keeps pointing stubbornly back toward impact dynamics. As one Reddito put it, I'm a geophysics grad student. My supervisor called Skeleton Lake a career trap. You can spend years trying to prove it's an impact crater and never find a smoking gun. Or try to prove it isn't and never explain the shape. He said the lake eats thesis proposals. I am currently writing my thesis proposal about Skeleton Lake. So what's the real trade-off? Skeleton Lake is, functionally, a gorgeous Muskoka cottage lake. People swim in it. People kayak across it. People pay genuinely alarming amounts of money for waterfront property on its perfectly circular shores without necessarily knowing they might be buying a dock on the edge of an 800-million-year-old cosmic wound, which is either deeply cool or deeply unsettling depending on your relationship with existential scale. Not gonna lie, my cottage is on a meteor crater is the best possible thing you could say at a dinner party. Worth the property taxes alone. Okay, can we talk about the name one more time? Because I cannot let this go. Skeleton Lake. This is a perfectly circular, anomalously deep, possibly space rock-created body of water in one of Canada's most picturesque cottage regions, and someone looked at all of that and said skeleton. Not Crystal Lake. Not Mirror Pond. Not Clarity Basin or Muskoka Blue or literally anything that a tourism board would approve. Skeleton. Other Ontario lakes have names like Fairy Lake and Harmony Lake and Sunshine Lake. This one got skeleton. Ontario was apparently in a very specific mood the day they named this particular body of water, and I, for one, respect the commitment to the bit. Picture this. You're in a canoe, dead center of Skeleton Lake, summer afternoon, the shoreline making a perfect circle around you in every direction, like you're floating in the iris of an enormous eye that's looking straight up at the sky. The water beneath you is so clear you can see deep into the blue-black below, deeper than feels reasonable for a lake this size, deeper than feels comfortable for a lake this size. If the impact theory is right, you're sitting in a scar left by something that fell from space before complex life existed on Earth, before eyes existed to watch it fall, before anything alive was here to hear the sound it made. The water is perfectly still. The sky reflects perfectly on the surface. You are very, very small. And a lake has been here for 800 million years and will be here for 800 million more, completely indifferent to your existential crisis in a rented canoe. And from a hole that might have been punched from above, the next mystery was built from below. Or rather, built on top of something that goes very, very high. On the most dramatic rock formation in Ontario, someone arranged stones into circles that predate our explanations for why they are there. And getting to them requires surviving Lake Superior's weather, which is its own adventure. Number 3. The Thunderbird Nests of Sleeping Giant, Thunder Bay, Ontario. Thunder Bay sits at the northwestern tip of Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake on the planet by surface area, a body of water so enormous it generates its own weather systems, its own storms, its own particular brand of "you should not be out on this water right now," that sailors have respected and occasionally ignored fatally for centuries. Thunder Bay itself is a city of about 110,000 people, the kind of northern Ontario city that's genuinely proud of itself in a way that doesn't require your validation. It has great food, a surprisingly vibrant art scene, and views of Lake Superior that make you understand immediately why people choose to live this far north. And just offshore, extending into the lake like a giant stone finger pointing at the horizon, is the Sleeping Giant, a massive mesa formation that, from Thunder Bay's waterfront, looks exactly like an enormous figure lying on its back. Flat top, sheer cliff sides dropping hundreds of feet to superior surface. The Anishinaabe know it as Nanabaju, the sleeping giant of legend, turned to stone. It's one of the most visually striking natural formations in Ontario, possibly in Canada, and on top of it, in the exposed rock of the mesa, are the nests. Here's what you're working with. The Thunderbird nests are circular stone pits, rings of carefully placed, sometimes deliberately shaped rocks, typically 1.5 to 3 meters in diameter, found on the exposed mesa tops of the Sleeping Giant and at additional sites along Lake Superior's north shore. Standard archaeological interpretation, vision quest sites, places where individuals from Anishinaabe communities fasted, prayed, and sought spiritual guidance from Animikiai, the Thunderbird, a powerful being associated with storms, lightning, and Lake Superior itself. Sacred, significant, deeply meaningful within the cultural tradition that created them. All of that is true and documented and respected. And also, the older ones are doing something that the Vision Quest explanation doesn't fully account for. But here's what nobody tells you. Lichen dating on some of the deepest, most weathered pits suggests ages significantly older than the cultural period typically associated with vision quests in the region. We're potentially talking thousands of years, not hundreds, which doesn't disprove the vision quest interpretation, but raises an uncomfortable question about who was doing it that long ago and whether this practice was inherited from a tradition so old we've lost the thread entirely. Then there's the location problem. Vision quests happened in remote, challenging places. That's part of the point. The physical ordeal is inseparable from the spiritual experience. But the Thunderbird nests aren't just remote. They're on mesa tops that require genuinely technical, exposed, dangerous scrambling to access. The effort-to-reach ratio is dramatically beyond other Vision Quest sites in the region. Someone didn't wander up here casually. Someone committed to getting here in a way that goes beyond what a solo faster typically manages. And then there's the stonework itself. The fitted precision in the older pits, stones shaped and placed with a tightness that exceeds pile rocks in a ring, is unusual for a structure theoretically built by a single individual on a solo fast. Multiple people, coordinated effort, possibly over multiple generations. The nests weren't built once. Some appear to have been maintained. As one Redditor put it, reached the nest once after a genuinely sketchy scramble. The stonework, the exposure, superior stretching to every horizon. I remember thinking whoever built these wasn't just looking for a quiet place to pray. They were trying to get as close to the sky as physically possible. It felt less like a meditation spot and more like a launch pad. So what's the real trade-off? The Thunderbird nests exist at the intersection of living cultural significance and unresolved archaeological mystery, and those two things require different kinds of respect simultaneously. For Anishinaabe communities, these aren't puzzle pieces waiting for academic solution. They're sacred sites with continuous meaning that doesn't require Western archaeology's endorsement to be valid. For researchers, they're a dataset with gaps that current frameworks don't fill. Both things are true. The nests hold both realities without resolving the tension between them, which is, honestly, exactly what a site named after a being that controls storms would do. Okay, can we talk about Lake Superior's weather for 1 second? Because studying the Thunderbird nest requires getting to the Thunderbird nest, which requires hiking into Sleeping Giant Provincial Park, which requires surviving whatever mood Lake Superior has decided to be in that particular day. And Superior doesn't have weather. Superior has intentions. You can leave the trailhead in warm September sunshine and reach the mesa in horizontal sleet that appears from nowhere with the specific energy of something that noticed you coming and made plans. The Thunderbird controls storms. The nests are on top of a mesa in a lake that generates its own storm systems. You have to do exposed rock scrambling to reach them. I'm not saying it's a trap. I'm saying if it were a trap, it would look exactly like this. Picture this. You've made the scramble, genuinely sketchy, both hands on rock, Superior visible in terrifying glimpses through the cliff edges beside you, and you pull yourself onto the flat mesa top. The wind hits immediately. Not wind like you experience in a city. Wind like Superior has been saving it specifically for this moment, channeled across 1,000 kilometers of open water to arrive at this exact exposed rock, at this exact second. And there, in the surface of the ancient stone, are the pits. Circular, tight-stoned, weathered to a gray that matches the sky above Superior on a storm day. You kneel beside the oldest one and look at the fitted stones and think about the hands that placed them, not last century, not 5 centuries ago, but possibly 100 generations back, people standing exactly where you're kneeling, looking at exactly this horizon, trying to get the attention of exactly the thing that's currently throwing wind at your face hard enough to make your eyes water. The lake stretches to the curve of the earth in every direction. The sky is enormous. You understand, completely and physically, why someone built a nest up here. Not to hide from the storm, to be seen by it. And for mysteries built on the surface of the earth, the next site goes deeper. Literally and historically. Because there's an area of Ontario where ancient earthworks, impossible labor calculations, and long-distance trade networks all converge in one place, and the standard textbook explanation for who built it all doesn't survive basic arithmetic. Number 2. The Miller Mounds Otonabee River, Rice Lake Area, Ontario. The Rice Lake area sits in the Peterborough region of central Ontario, cottage country adjacent, the kind of landscape where the Canadian Shield starts softening into rolling farmland and the lakes multiply like they're trying to make a point. It's genuinely beautiful country. Historic in the documented sense, United Empire Loyalists, early settler communities, the Trent-Severn Waterway. But beneath the documented history, beneath the colonial layer that textbooks tend to start with, is something considerably older and considerably more architecturally ambitious than small bands of seasonal hunter-gatherers, which is the description that keeps appearing in academic literature about this region and keeps not quite matching the archaeological evidence on the ground. The Miller Mounds are part of that evidence. A large, complicated, inconvenient part. Here's what you're working with. Located at the mouth of the Otonabee River where it meets Rice Lake, the Miller Mounds are pre-contact burial earthworks, multiple mounds arranged with deliberate spatial organization, showing evidence of ceremonial planning and, in some interpretations, possible astronomical alignment. The grave goods recovered from the site tell an immediate story about the people who built it. Copper from Lake Superior, shells from the Gulf of Mexico, materials from trading networks spanning the entire eastern half of the continent. These weren't isolated people. They were connected, participants in a continental exchange system that moved goods thousands of miles with the kind of organizational consistency that requires, at minimum, reliable communication and trusted relationships across enormous distances. That's already a more sophisticated picture than small seasonal bands suggests. But the mounds themselves are where the math gets genuinely difficult. But here's what nobody tells you. Moving the volume of earth required to construct multiple burial mounds, using baskets, human backs, and manual labor, requires bodies. A lot of them, working in coordination, over an extended period. The labor calculations for earthworks of this scale, done by archaeologists who study similar sites in North America, consistently point toward either a substantial resident population or a major regional coordination effort that brought workers from significant distances specifically to build this complex. Neither option is well supported by the existing archaeological record for Rice Lake at the estimated construction period. There's no identified large permanent settlement nearby. No evidence of the kind of food storage infrastructure that would sustain a concentrated workforce. The labor existed. The mounds prove the labor existed. But the archaeological explanation for where that labor came from is generously incomplete. Here's where it gets bigger. Look at a map of this region and draw lines between 3 points. The Miller Mounds at Rice Lake, the Serpent Mounds 5 kilometers east on the same lake, and the Peterborough petroglyphs roughly 40 kilometers to the north. 3 monumental sites, shared geographic proximity, overlapping cultural periods. The Serpent Mounds show sophisticated effigy construction. The Miller Mounds show organized burial ritual with continental trade connections. The petroglyphs, which we'll get to in 1 minute, show 900 carved images on a humming rock that include possible astronomical notation and symbols that have sparked international academic controversy. 3 sites, 1 region, all pointing toward a culture of significant sophistication, organizational capacity, and symbolic complexity. And the textbook description of who lived here during this period is still, in many mainstream sources, seasonally occupied by small bands of hunter-gatherers. Both things cannot be true simultaneously. As one Reddito put it, did my undergrad thesis on Rice Lake archaeology. The more I researched, the more I realized the standard narrative has enormous gaps. There's a triangle, Serpent Mounds, Miller Mounds, petroglyphs, that implies shared symbolism, organized labor, and long-distance trade. My advisor told me to narrow my focus. I think he meant, stop pulling on this thread. So what's the real trade-off here? This isn't just an academic puzzle. The gap between what the Rice Lake archaeological record actually shows and what mainstream narrative has historically described is a gap with real implications for how Canada understands its pre-contact history, for how Indigenous heritage is valued and resourced, and for the basic question of whose achievements get recognized as civilization and whose get filed under seasonal subsistence patterns. The Miller Mounds aren't just earthworks. They're an argument, made of dirt, that has been sitting at the mouth of the Otonabee River for 1,000 years, waiting for someone to take it seriously enough to follow where it leads. Okay, can we talk about the phrase hunter-gatherer and how it's been applied in Canadian archaeology with a generosity that borders on academic malpractice? Because hunter-gatherer is a real, legitimate, descriptive term for real, legitimate, complex human cultures, it is not a synonym for simple or small-scale or incapable of monumental construction. The people who built Stonehenge were, technically, hunter-gatherers. The people who built the shell mounds of coastal Brazil were hunter-gatherers. The label describes a subsistence strategy, not an organizational capacity. Using it to implicitly explain away evidence of large-scale coordinated construction is, and I'm being precise here, backwards. The mounds are the data. The label should fit the data, not the other way around. Picture this. You're standing on the low rise of Miller Mound at dusk, the Otonabee River catching the last orange light behind you, Rice Lake spreading out ahead. Somewhere to your left, 5 kilometers east, the Serpent Mound curves along the same shoreline. Somewhere behind you, over the hills, a rock with 900 carvings hums in the dark above an underground stream. 3 monuments, 1 horizon, all built by people whose names the wind has taken, whose language we cannot reconstruct, whose organizational sophistication we keep underselling in print while their architecture outlasts our explanations for it. They were here. They built things meant to last forever. The mounds are still here. We're the ones who forgot what they mean. The dirt remembers, though. The dirt always remembers. And from earthworks that rewrote everything I thought I knew about this region, we arrive at number one. The site that connects everything. The site that hums. The site with 900 voices carved into a single rock above an underground river. The most extraordinary place in Ontario. And possibly, I'll stand behind this, the most important place most Canadians have never visited. Number 1. The Peterborough Petroglyphs, Kinomajwabkan. The Teaching Rocks. Peterborough County, Ontario. Kinomajwabkan sits in Peterborough County, roughly 55 kilometers northeast of Peterborough itself, deep enough into the Ontario forest that getting there requires commitment. The kind of drive where the highway becomes a road, becomes a narrower road, becomes a gravel suggestion through trees. It's now enclosed in a climate-controlled building managed jointly by Parks Canada and, critically, by Curve Lake First Nation and Hiawatha First Nation, the Anishinaabe communities whose ancestors created it and for whom it remains a living sacred site, not a historical artifact. That distinction matters enormously, and we'll come back to it. But first, the rock. A single, massive expanse of crystalline white marble, roughly 55 meters long, naturally smooth, brilliantly pale against the dark forest floor. And covering that surface, carved with tools into stone that required real sustained effort to mark, over 900 individual images. Turtles, snakes, human figures and postures that suggest ceremony. Boats, and not simple boats, boats with masts, boats that certain researchers have spent careers arguing about. Solar symbols, lunar cycles, geometric forms that recur across the surface with the consistency of a deliberate symbolic vocabulary. Faces, hands, things that look like nothing you have a word for and everything you feel you should recognize. And underneath it all, running through the limestone below, an underground stream. Moving water, constant, creating a resonance in the rock above it that you don't hear so much as feel, a low vibration, below the threshold of easy perception, that moves through the stone and into your hand and up your arm and into your chest when you place your palm flat on the surface. The rock is alive in the most literal, physical, non-metaphorical sense available to geology. It moves. It resonates. It has been resonating continuously for longer than anyone has been alive to feel it. The Anishinaabe name, Kinomajwabkan, means the teaching rocks, a place where the rock itself communicates, where placing your hand on the surface is an act of listening, not just touching. That understanding predates every archaeological study of the site by centuries, possibly millennia. Here's what you're working with. The carvings are estimated somewhere between 500 and 1,000 plus years old. The dating is genuinely debated, with some researchers pushing for older ranges based on weathering patterns and stylistic analysis. They were created by Algonquian-speaking peoples, almost certainly ancestors of the current Anishinaabe communities who steward the site. The carving technique required sustained, skilled effort. The marble is hard, the images are precise, and 900 of them represent an enormous collective investment of time, intention, and meaning. The site was discovered by non-Indigenous researchers in 1954, a framing the Anishinaabe communities involved finds somewhat ironic, given that they never lost track of it. It was declared a National Historic Site in 1970 and enclosed in its current protective structure in 1984, when acid rain damage became a genuine threat to the carving's survival. The building saved the carvings. The building also put a roof over something that was designed to exist under open sky, which is a tension nobody has fully resolved, and we'll get to that. But here's what nobody tells you. 3 things, and they build on each other. First, the symbol controversy. When non-Indigenous researchers began seriously studying the Peterborough petroglyphs in the mid-20th century, some noted visual similarities between certain carvings and symbols found in Bronze Age Scandinavian rock art. Ogham script, Mediterranean maritime imagery. The kind of comparisons that, in the 1960s and 70s, fed directly into theories about pre-Columbian transatlantic contact, Vikings, Phoenicians, take your pick of the fringe theory buffet. Mainstream archaeology has firmly consistently, and correctly push back on the most extreme versions of these theories. Convergent symbolic evolution is real. Humans across cultures independently develop similar imagery because humans share similar cognitive architecture and similar observable phenomena: the sun, the moon, boats, animals, the human body. All of that is true, and the visual similarities are still striking. And the most honest archaeologists will acknowledge that convergent evolution is sometimes a sophisticated way of saying we see the similarity and we don't have a better explanation. The symbols haven't been explained away. They've been categorized. Those are different things. Second, the astronomical precision. Multiple researchers, including some with serious institutional credentials, have identified what appear to be solar and lunar cycle representations in the Peterborough carvings, mapped with an accuracy that implies sustained, multi-generational, systematic astronomical observation. This is entirely consistent with what we know about indigenous knowledge systems, which have always included sophisticated celestial tracking. The problem isn't that it's impossible. The problem is that it's dramatically underrepresented in the mainstream archaeological narrative of the region, which still tend to describe pre-contact cultures here in terms that don't make adequate room for they were doing systematic astronomy and encoding it in stone. Third, the rock itself. And this is the one that I think matters most and gets discussed least. The fact that this specific slab of marble in a forest full of rock happens to sit above an underground stream and happens to vibrate because of it, and was chosen as the carving surface, is almost certainly not coincidental. The people who created these images almost certainly knew the rock moved, felt it under their hands, understood it as a quality, as life, as voice, as the thing that made this surface different from every other surface available to them in the surrounding forest. Which means the carvings aren't art applied to a passive surface. They're a conversation with an active one. The images aren't on the rock. They're in dialogue with it. That's a conceptual framework, art as reciprocal communication with living stone, that Western archaeology is only beginning to develop vocabulary for, let alone actually grapple with analytically. The Anishinaabe communities who steward this site have had that vocabulary the entire time. They named it the teaching rocks. The rock teaches. The carvings are the curriculum. The vibration is the voice. We showed up 500 years late and called it a discovery. As one visitor wrote, the guide, a member of Curve Lake First Nation, asked us to place our hands flat on the rock and close our eyes. I felt the vibration immediately. It moves through your bones. She said, "You're listening now. The rock has been talking the whole time. Most people just forgot how to hear it." I have never had a more profound experience at any monument, museum, or wonder of the world. I have been to the Parthenon. I have stewed in the Colosseum. I have seen Machu Picchu at dawn. The Teaching Rocks is the most important place I have ever stood, and almost nobody knows it exists. So what's the real trade-off? There isn't one. Not in the way this video has framed trade-offs for every other site. The affordable town with the rough edges, the beautiful lake with the unsettling depth, the dramatic landscape with the brutal weather. The Peterborough petroglyphs don't ask you to accept the downside. They ask something different. They ask whether you're willing to stand in front of evidence that the human story in this place is older, deeper, more sophisticated, and more spiritually articulate than the version of history you were handed in school, and let that actually change something in how you understand where you live. That's not a trade-off. That's an invitation. Okay, the building. I said we'd come back to it, and here we are. Parks Canada enclosed the petroglyphs in a climate-controlled structure to protect them from acid rain weathering. This was the right call. The carvings would be significantly more damaged today without it, possibly illegible in sections, possibly lost in others. The building is an act of preservation, and I genuinely support its existence. And also, the people who carved these images did it under open sky. They did it while rain fell on a rock and the underground stream ran loud beneath their feet, and the vibration moved up through the marble into their hands, and the stars were directly overhead, and the forest sound surrounded them completely. They carved on a rock that was in the world, not protected from it. And now the rock hums inside a building with fluorescent lighting supplements and a gift shop near the entrance and a parking lot a short walk away. The experience of the site is real and powerful and genuinely moving even inside that building. I know because I've felt it. But there is something not wrong exactly, but incomplete about experiencing in a climate-controlled interior a thing that was made to exist in conversation with the sky. I don't have a solution. I'm just noting that the building saves the carvings and also changes what the carvings are. Both things are true simultaneously. The rock comes either way. Make of that what you will. Picture this. You step inside. The first thing isn't the carvings, it's the feeling. Before your eyes adjust, before you've processed the scale of the marble expanse ahead of you, there's something in your chest. A low frequency, below hearing. The kind of vibration that you dismiss as imagination except that everyone in your group feels it simultaneously without being told to expect it. Then your eyes adjust and you see the rock. White, vast, alive with images, hundreds of them, layered across the surface in a density that takes minutes to begin parsing. You walk toward it slowly because something about the scale demands slowness. You place your hand flat on the marble. It moves under your palm. Not dramatically, not like a speaker at a concert or a phone on vibrate. Subtly, persistently, a deep, continuous, ancient movement. The underground water, hundreds of feet below, transmitting itself upward through solid rock and into your hand and up your arm and into your chest where it joins the vibration you already felt when you walked in. The rock is talking. It has been talking for longer than the building has existed, longer than the country has existed, longer than the language you're thinking in has existed. 900 voices carved into a living stone above a singing river in a forest in Ontario, by people who understood something about this specific patch of earth that took the rest of the world centuries to begin approaching. And the rock is still here, still vibrating, still teaching. If this video changed how you see Ontario, or honestly, if it just kept you up a little tonight, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel find the people who care about this stuff. Subscribe if you haven't, hit the bell, and drop in the comments, which site are you visiting first? And which one got under your skin the most? For me, it's always the teaching rocks. That guide's words live in my head rent-free. The rock has been talking the whole time. Most people just forgot how to hear it. I'll see you in the next one. And if you think Ontario's mysteries are something, wait until you see what Quebec has been hiding. That video is coming. You're genuinely not ready.